One, two. Is this on? Welcome to another answer to the age old question of do you know what really burns my ass? Game masters who don't know their players. There is a significant difference between designing a game for strangers and designing a game for your home group. Having run a shared campaign for nearly 20 years, I have discovered that there is a different method that is effective between designing a game for sale and designing a game for friends. When you run a game for your home group, which Wizards of the Coast once claimed was an average of 5 players, I don't remember where that figure came from, you want to make sure that every player is engaged. But what does that mean? You can't tailor a game to 5 different personalities and perspectives every single session. So what I do is I pick about half of the players to engage in one session, and then a different half the next time, and so on. Different people each time. That way, for example, if Bruce feels like he's just along for the ride this week, he can be more in the spotlight next week. While Jamie, for example, gets a special focus this week, but her hook might not resolve for 3 or more weeks while the other players get their focus. The good thing about running for friends is you know both their personalities and their characters' personalities, which, if they are good players, is going to be different. I'll talk on that some other time. But for 5 players, that is 10 different perspectives, giving you a lot to draw from. Also, you don't just have to go for a personality. In my Sunday superhero game, Dakota plays a reporter, so I took an NPC reporter to hook him in last week's adventure. But I could also have used an NPC who had similar superpowers, similar background, or an NPC that he'd encountered earlier in the campaign. Depends on who I really wanted to use out of those different options. And sometimes players come with their own hooks. In that same game, Bruce plays a government agent, so I can always just have anyone from local, state, or federal authority come and ask for the team's help with something to hook them into the plot. I don't make a hook for everyone. Again, I feel when you have multiple players with different things they want out of the game, you end up watering down the experience to make sure that everyone shines all the time. Of course, it helps that I have players who have just as much fun watching their friends shine as they have shining on their own. But what if I'm writing an event for publication, which, like I say, I've been doing for a while? What if I don't know who is going to be playing this game in the future? In this case, I still have half the information to work with, but half, still enough. I might not know, for example, that Andrew or Stephen or Tracy are going to play this particular event, and especially don't know if they will play it together. I do know, however, that a character like Sophie, someone who never met a cryptid she didn't want to fight, or a character like Sinjin, who never met a problem he couldn't buy his way out of, or even Mouse, who is still learning how to overcome problems. I know how they're going to play things out, and those are generic enough concepts that it could translate to other players. So I don't make something specifically to challenge them, but I do think what would they do and make sure their solution is an option. The easiest of these 3, of course, is Sophie. Combat is the default conflict resolution tactic of role playing gamers. But I make sure that sneaking around the guard is just as effective as a frontal assault. I make sure that bribing the guard is possible if it makes sense. I'm not tailoring the game to those characters or those players, to those character types. One thing I've seen multiple roleplay companies do when playtesting their product is to edit to the playtest group. So they have an adventure that they test with some of their employees and maybe some friends, and then that adventure gets edited in accordance with what those players did. The challenges get set to those players and their game style and their characters' capabilities, which means when you buy the event and play it with different personalities, different expectations, different mix of capabilities, you have a less enjoyable experience. Might have been a perfect game for those, but unless you expect only those players to participate, it isn't a good product to try to market and sell. The two might seem the same, but developing a game for your friends and developing a game for your market are different. And somewhere in the middle is being a DM for hire, because in this case, you get to know your players in a way that published events never will, but you don't find that until later. You slowly transition from general hooks to events that spotlight the different characters or players specifically. Have you played in role-playing games that were published, intended for a general audience? How did they compare to the ones where your local DM designed it or modified it specifically for your table? Are you one of the people who've only ever played in published role-playing games? Which did you prefer, published or custom-made, tailored to your group? Leave something down in the comments. I have been reading all of the comments and would love to know your thoughts. This will help me know what to talk about going forward.